Welcome to Famous Dead People with your host, Carl Dahlquist.
Born in 1809, the 16th President of the United States, known as the Great Emancipator. At 6'4", he is the tallest president we have ever had, and he's the first president to be born outside of the original 13 colonies, President Abraham Lincoln. President Lincoln. When the war initially started, the North's purpose for fighting was to preserve the Union. Why did this shift after the Battle of Antietam in September of 1862?
Well, Carl, it is true that from the outset of the war, we fought to bring the rebellious South back into the Union. In 1858, I made a speech in the Illinois House of Representatives as part of a sequence of debates between myself and my worthy opponent, Stephen Douglas. In that speech, what it seems has hence been termed the House Divided speech, I argued that our Union could not stand as being half free and half slave, and that in order to form a more perfect Union, slavery would have to cease spreading across our glorious nation, and would have to be completely abolished sooner or later. After the Battle of Antietam, our boys finally demonstrated that we had the means and wherewithal to push the Southern rebels out of the North, and I felt that the timing was right to bring a more offensive approach to the war rather than one of counter and defense. Thus, it made a great deal of sense, not only to inform the North, but also the Southern states in the rebellion, that we would now be coming south not only to put an end to this rebellion and restore the Union, but coming on a journey to free those bonded in involuntary servitude for no reason other than the color of his or her skin.
You faced a lot of tragedy in your life, and you described it as your melancholy. Can you explain?
You kids these days have some fancy schmancy word for it. I believe you call it clinical depression. When you have worries and troubles of an entire nation bearing down on you from the first day of your presidency to the last, it weighs you down. Top that off with the personal tragedies of losing all my children at fairly young ages, except for my boy Robert. It makes perfect sense that I would find it, well, depressing. If you look at pictures of me at the start of my first term, and then the more famous picture not long before heading to Ford's Theater with Mrs. Lincoln, you can see just how these worries wore me down.
Why did you bring in all of your closest political rivals to form your cabinet?
Because they provided me with credibility, as well as the fact that, given the opportunity, I felt I could win them over. In short, I knew that my presidency would have to reach across the aisle in order to make good government, and this was going to be a good first step towards that goal.
And what do you consider to be the greatest honor you've received in your life?
When I was a young man, I joined the militia to fight against the Indians. The fellows in my company got to choose their own captain, and they elected me as theirs. I've been elected to the presidency twice. I helped navigate the Civil War, and I did all I could to help free the slaves in the South. However, being voted captain of my company has always been something that I've been particularly proud of.
With your limited military experience, how did you prepare for being commander-in-chief of our armed forces during the Civil War?
I read extensively on military theory and tried to surround myself with the very best military advisors. I tried to get General Lee to lead our forces, but for some reason his heart was at home in Virginia, which was in rebellion. To be honest, I didn't take the rejection well, so we used General Lee's family lands and we turned it into a giant cemetery. You might know it as Arlington National Cemetery.
So, we're almost out of time. But as one final question, tell us, how did you die?
Well, Carl, after the end of that great struggle with our southern states, Mary Todd and I decided that it was about high time we took an evening for ourselves. We decided to go to the theater to see the new play, Our American Cousin. Apparently this John Wilkes Booth character didn't take too highly of me taking the evening off. He came up into the booth and shot me in the back of the head. It took a while for me to pass, but the deed was done at that point.
Well, thank you for coming to Famous Dead People, Mr. Lincoln. And this concludes another episode of Famous Dead People. Join us next time when we speak with Sir Isaac Newton.